You know, in the earlier part of the show, I was reading from John chapter 15, where Jesus said that we're to love our neighbor. And he says, this is the commandment that we are to follow to bear fruit and be a witness. He says, you are my friends. Jesus says, we are his friends if we do what he commanded. Well, what does he command? Well, you go down here in verse 16, he says, I've ordained that you bring forth much fruit, and your fruit will remain. And whatsoever you ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. Do you know, we are commanded to be witnesses. And the death of Charlie Kirk, tragic though it is such a great gospel opportunity. So let me tell you just a strategy, and if you allow, the Spirit of God will help you develop your own style. When I'm talking to people, like Barry McGuire says, look for ways to steer the conversation toward spiritual things. You know, people will say, you know, oh, it was a tragedy, that shooting. And I might say, yes, our nation, we need to turn back to God. And 100 out of 100 people nowadays will say, yes, we sure do. Um, an example, yesterday, I went to a neighbor's house. There's an elderly neighbor, and my wife and I had not seen her out. And so yesterday we went to her house and we saw a young man. Well, it was his grandmother, and she had had a heart attack. Sure enough, she was in the hospital. And our fears were real that, you know, we thought our neighbor, something was wrong. And so it was clear the young man did not know Christ. But we said, we're praying for you. And he said, well, you know, I guess. And I said, you know, prayer really works. And he looked at me, he was probably 25, very concerned about his grandmother. And he said, do you really believe that? I said, I really believe that. And I said, do you know there's a prayer that always gets a yes? And that's the sinner's prayer. And we were able to steer the conversation towards sharing the gospel. So I want to challenge you. Look, if a shy introvert like me could talk to people about Jesus, I know you can. On my website, alexmcfarland.com, there's a tab, What Does God Say About My Relationship with Him? You can get this book that we've given to more than 250,000 people, but it's there as a PDF on the website. So if you need to come to Christ, do that today. But if you want to get up to speed on how to bring others to Christ, go to alexmcfarland.com. There's several hundred articles about how to answer the objections people have. But if you want to learn the basics of the gospel and how to share with people, and maybe even how to reaffirm your own faith, alexmcfarland.com, look for the tab that says, What Does God Say About My Relationship with Him? Trust me, if you're willing and you ask for God's help, He'll prepare you. You can become the most bold, fruitful witness for Christ if you'll let God do that in your life. And let's remember, that's what He called us to do.